We back. I appreciate y'all being here for part two of why I don't do Christian hip hop. Um, the last video we kind of touched on some of the things that are surrounding my origins and how I came into the game and what were some of the reasons as to why I felt like it was kind of unnecessary for me to call my music Christian hip hop, and what I felt like Christian hip hop actually is. And for those of you who haven't seen that video, go check it out. But just a quick summary. I felt it was unnecessary. I felt that that was something that would take me away from the culture that was specific to me, and it felt a little colonial. You know what I'm saying? It felt like something that colonizers would do. They remove people from their context and their culture that they're specific and indigenous to, and they try to make you adopt their culture. So I felt early on that that was something that was taking place with me. I felt like a lot of the people in Christian hip hop that I was meeting, they were cool, but some of them were kind of anti hip hop culture. And it seemed like, because I said that I did hip hop, they, allowed me to become a part of what they were also anti. So I thought that, for me, it wasn't a safe space. And then, even more, like what I wanted to touch on in part two, I really want to get y'all opinion on this. One of the things, additionally to the things I said in part one that really made me not, feel like Christian hip hop was the space for me to be in hardcore, was the fact that, I didn't see any really like street rap. You know what I'm saying? Some people may say gangster rap or whatever, but I think that street rap is more specific to what I'm thinking. I didn't see a lot of street rap, and some people may say, well, why would there be street or gangster type rap in Christian music? And that's a good question, because I ask the same thing now, looking back on what I feel like the culture was. Yeah, why would it be? I don't think that it's a space for that, or it's really ever been a space for that. I remember that one time I was on the phone with, a I don't know if he considers himself to be Christian hip hop anymore, but at the time, that's what they were doing. And he told me, he's from, similar background as me. So he said, until I heard your album, I thought I was gonna have to rap like Cross Movement. You know what I'm saying? I thought I was gonna have to kind of tuck myself away and not really be able to represent, what I come from and speak to those things in a way where it would be embraced. A lot of people early on, when it came to Christian hip hop, it was like, really, I feel like Christian hip hop early on, especially if you came from like the East Coast, it wasn't even just Christian hip hop. It was even more specific than that. To me, it was like like theological hip hop, like theologian rap. You know what I mean? And although like I could show you some, books on the other side of this camera, theological books, and I'll probably show those on the next video. But yeah, that wasn't the basis of where I was pulling from, even though I had that information. So I think it made people think, because that's not what I was rapping about, that I didn't know about those things, that I didn't have books on systematic theology and books by different Orthodox Christian teachers that added to my life profoundly. So I think that because of the content of my music, a lot of people just for some reason, I thought that I was clear in my music about what I believed, but I guess I wasn't saying Jesus enough in the songs. I guess the fact that if you said Jesus' name a lot, I guess that proved to some people that you really were a Christian, and that you weren't ashamed of your faith. So I think early on, the measuring rod was, how do we find out if this person is really a believer, or if they are a believer, if they're not ashamed of their faith. And that seemed to be the way to do that seemed to be by doing kind of like a count, I guess, on how much a person talked about the Bible or how much a person talked about Christ in their music. And that never made me think that you were anything but a person that talked about Christ in your music. I was waiting to get around people to see how they were in real life, you know what I'm saying, and let them see how I was in real life. But that aside, I really had to ask myself, like, where's the space for artists like myself that are more narrative based? You know, I was watching a video on DJ Wado's show. It came out maybe a couple years ago, I guess, a few years ago. It was an interview with one of my favorite Christian thinkers from the black community, Dr. Ellis Jr. If y'all don't know who that is, Google Dr. Ellis Jr. I'll try to find the video and maybe add it to the description from Wado, the one that I'm talking about. And in that video, Dr. Ellis Jr. was talking to Wado, and he was talking about how there's a demographic of people that are churched. Then you have a demographic of people who are unchurched, and then you have a demographic of people who are the Unchurchables. That was what he called them. So unchurchable would be somebody who is a Christian, I guess, and they're a part of church, but they kind of reject the culture of church and keep their cloak on of their culture that they come from. Because when you're a part of a culture, you can kind of see what it is and what it isn't, you know, from an insider's view, as opposed to an outsider who may have an issue with hip hop and the culture of hip hop because they're an outsider. You know, even for those who are now against hip hop who were insiders, I think that when I talk to many of them, it seems that they were more so impacted by the negative only that they saw in hip hop. For me, I've never only been affected by negativity in hip hop. I've been impacted by the positive things that have come through the culture, meaning, you know, the creativity, the writing, the lyricism, the production, the content, the stories, the narratives, you know, just these things that make me feel like, you know, I'm getting to know this person or this artist as a person through their music, not in real life, but through their music. And that's what I wanted to do, you know, that's what I came from. So I didn't see a need to kind of flip it once I became a Christian, because for me, when I became a Christian, I was already rapping. A lot of people who do Christian rap, not all of them, but a lot of them, to me, it seems like they started rapping after they became a Christian. For me, I was already rapping before I was a Christian. And then when I rededicated my life to Christ, I didn't say I'm about to change what I'm doing from hip hop to Christian hip hop. I didn't feel the need to change my culture, my title, or my demographic and genre. I just felt like I was the one that needed to change. My heart needed to change. My demographic didn't necessarily need to change, and my culture didn't need to change as much as I did. And I felt like by inserting myself not even inserting myself, remaining in the culture that I come from, that by default there would be things that people would see that may cause change, seeds that could be planted. And it's a lot of that happened, you know, with me being on, you know, my first label, Ready Rock Records, and having label mates like MF Doom and, you know, KMD and different artists I can name. You know, they're artists who, you know, in hip hop culture, you know, that have asked me questions about my faith because they heard my album, my first album. That label wasn't a Christian label. That was a underground hip hop label, a very prestigious underground hip hop label that was based out of Los Angeles, California, that I was a fan of. And my producer, Jude, the architect, Gavin, was close friends with the guys who ran the label. You know what I mean? So, like, they started hearing my music through him, and eventually, to my surprise, they wanted to work with me too. You know, before that, I was just a fan of the artists and the vinyls and the 12 inches and, you know, that they were putting out. This was when, you know, you had stores still popping like Fat Beats, and, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that was what it was. But when it came to, you know, me finding out more about Christian hip hop, I didn't see any artists like me. I didn't. The closest that you really had to me was probably like Gospel Gangsters, you know what I'm saying, or Corey Red and Precise, you know what I'm saying. Other than that, that was it, you know what I'm saying. It wasn't no other solo acts, you know what I mean. And I didn't even really look at Corey and Precise music as like more street driven. I feel like they're from the streets, but their music was more kind of like underground, raw, you know what I'm saying. Just deep content, you know. It's kind of like, it reminded me of like Sons of Men, you know what I'm saying, or like Killer Army. That's initially what I heard when I heard Corey Red and Precise, you know. So it wasn't really like street based music that was Christian from Christians. It was just what it was to me. And those are my guys, you know what I'm saying. Corey and Precise, those are my guys. You know, even Gospel Gangsters, you know what I'm saying. I got to meet them in Nashville, and they told, you know, Solo told me how he felt about my music. He was like, yo, you bringing the streets. And that stood out to me because I was like, wow, that was the first time it seemed like somebody had really embraced the fact that that's what I was bringing in my music, meaning people who were Christians. There's other people that were Christians that embraced it, and people who weren't Christian, but for artists that were Christians, that was really like the first person that was like an artist who was in Christian hip hop that really kind of highlighted what they thought I brought to the game. You know, so I'm just curious, what do y'all feel? You know, because do y'all feel like it was ever a space, even in Christian hip hop, for artists to be embraced on a high level that was street? You know what I'm saying? Because some people may say, well, yeah, you, Jafia, you're the proof. You were embraced by Christian hip hop. You know what I'm saying? You became a person who would be named among the elite in Christian hip hop. You know, and I would agree with them. However, I don't think that by and large the culture, beyond certain pockets of fandom, I don't think the culture by and large was really, you know, set up in a way where it was embracing of that type of music. You know, I think it reminded them of the music that they thought was damaging coming from hip hop, because a lot of that music was coming from people who were street based artists. So I think in some ways I kind of echoed those artists when Christians in Christian hip hop would see me, the fans, the promoters, and things like that. Because you got to remember, I didn't understand Christian hip hop when I first came out. I didn't understand it at all. I knew it existed, and I knew about the artists, and I was becoming friends with some of them because they were reaching out to me, seeing me on message boards and, you know, different places that they would check for that were like hip hop sites were posting me, but I was a Christian. But the reason those hip hop sites were posting me was because I was listed as a hip hop artist because I was on a hip hop label. I wasn't on a Christian label. Even when I signed with Beatmart in Nashville, I didn't sign with them in my mind saying I'm about to sign with a Christian rap label or a Christian hip hop label. I was the first artist that they signed. I'm the first artist that Ty Collins signed when he started Beatmart. When he left Goatee Records to start Beatmart Records, he told me he wanted to sign me as his first artist. And when he got his distribution, he did. You know, so when I signed with him, it was coming off of me seeing what he did with what Goatee and him did with, you know, him and Toby Mac, and, you know what I'm saying, artists like I guess Grits, artists like Family Force 5, or really Reliant K. I remember seeing Reliant K on Jay Leno and thinking like, man, that's cool. I heard them before. I think they were on Jay Leno. I heard them and I was like, yo, they sound like they're Christian based on the things they're saying, but they're not listed as a Christian act per se. Now, people in the Christian community listed them as a Christian act because that's the community, you know. But for a lot of outsiders, their music wasn't really heavily scripture based, in terms of being, I guess what would be the word, didactic. It was more narrative, you know, and Carl Ellis talked about that too, how, you know, there are artists in Christian hip hop that are more theological in their approach to making music, but then there's artists, he said there needs to be more artists who are narrative based. And when he said that, I thought about myself. And you know, I just didn't feel like there was ever really a real space for those type of artists, even besides me. Like I don't see any other artists, even now, except for maybe one or two. You know what I'm saying? That are kind of doing their thing, but I'm not sure that that music is the music that's the most embraced by that community, is what I'm saying. And it doesn't have to be. You know, I'm not saying that it should be. I do think it should be a greater space for people like those artists. Forget me, take me out the equation. For those artists, it should be a bigger, greater space for them. So that's all. I'm just curious what y'all think about that. You know, is Christian hip hop fertile ground and a safe space for street-based artists? Is it fertile ground? Is it a place where street-based artists who are Christians should plant their flag, you know, and expect to be embraced, you know? Or should those artists do what I did and just start out by just going to hip-hop and letting the chips fall where they may? Because for me, I feel like a lot of Christian hip-hop is kind of like used as a crutch. I do feel like there's truth to some people's story when they say, "Oh yeah, you do Christian hip hop because you wouldn't have made it on in regular hip hop." And I feel like that's true for some people. I think that some people wouldn't be embraced in hip hop culture based on their music. I was fortunately, I was fortunate enough to be embraced in that community to a degree. Nobody has really said that my music was whack or that, you know, they didn't think that there was a space for it there. I've always felt like there was a space for my music in hip hop, no matter if it was 3 people that bought it. I felt like the culture itself was already prepped for a street-based artist. It may be shocking to hear an artist that's Christian talk about the streets, but I think that that's the beauty of hip hop. It's so nuanced, and I felt like as nuanced as I wanted Christian hip hop to be, it just wasn't that, at least for me, even as a fan. You know, it wasn't enough artists for me to really gain sustenance from in different places. You know, so yeah, tell me what y'all think. This part 2. We probably gonna make it a trilogy. So you know, like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know how y'all feel. I'm happy y'all still here rocking with me. Let's get it. Part 3 on the way.